Good afternoon, and welcome back, everybody, to our second half for today. I'm Scott Silverman, co-founder of CommerceNext, and for those of you just joining us, CommerceNext, we're a community event series and conference for marketers at retail and direct-to-consumer brands. And on behalf of my co-founders, Veronica Sonsev and Alan Dick, I'd like to welcome back to the second half of day 2 of the CommerceNext Virtual Summit. Thank you all for tuning in and taking the time to join live or listen to the replay. In October is our Holiday Optimization Summit, and that is going to be on Wednesday, October 7th, and we'll be sending out more information for you to go and take a look at that. So a couple other things before we get started. In terms of the agenda for today, we have 4 sessions. First, we're going to have an interview with the CEO of Untuckit. Then we're going to dig into curbside pickup. We have a panel discussion on brand and performance marketing and during recessionary times and how that can be balanced. And then we are going to wrap things up with lessons learned and thoughts for the future with Jason Goldberg. So don't worry if you missed anything. You can download the slides, and there's other handouts. We're recording the summit. It's all going to be available later this week. You can also ask our speakers questions. I'll show you how to do that in a moment. If you want to continue to get reminders, you can text Commerce to 29691. And here's how to ask the questions. You'll see in the upper right, there's Q&A. Also, you go down to the bottom to ask your question. A lot of our speakers will be sticking around after their sessions to answer questions through this text method. The handouts, there's handouts for all of the slides, and a number of our sponsors have useful information that they've made available or some special offers. They'll be mentioning those through what we're doing during the different presentations. And then for those listening on the replay, you can look down here and find the handouts and the additional material as well. All right, so we're going to jump into our first session. For our first speaker of day 2 of the CommerceNext Virtual Summit, I'm excited to have Aaron Sanandris, CEO of Untuckit, join our virtual stage. We'll be talking to Aaron about new customer journeys traversing stores and online. So turn your camera and join us, Aaron.
All right, Scott, good morning and thank you for having me.
Yeah, thanks for joining us. So I wanted to just jump right in, and if you could take a few minutes and maybe explain the current Untuckit story and what you've been going through the past 5 months or so with COVID and some of the major changes that you've been dealing with.
Sure. Well, look, it's been a very interesting and challenging 5 months, to say the least. Obviously, the pandemic created a whole host of challenges for retailers, particularly those retailers that have any sort of significant physical footprint. Fortunately, our online business remained strong throughout. So as I said, the real challenge for us had been on the retail side, where we just had this massive dislocation between what our landlords were looking for in terms of rent and just the general economics of the stores. 2 of those months where the economics were a goose egg. And we're seeing continued challenges, obviously, in those areas where where we've been most hardest hit by the pandemic. So the New York stores and California stores. And fortunately, we do have good relationships with their landlords, and we're working through those misalignments as we speak. I think, though, there are always, and I'm a pretty optimistic person kind of by nature, so there's always tailwinds and opportunities that come out of the chaos. Sometimes you just need to look for them. So for us, we've been able to improve our marketing efficiencies. We spent a lot of money on marketing. And so what we did during the outset of the pandemic was we pulled all of our marketing spend back And then we started to relayer our marketing spend between digital and radio and TV and podcasts, and basically gave us the opportunity to remeasure some of those efficiencies, which absent a situation presenting itself probably just wouldn't have happened, right? We're spending a lot a month, and you've got this train that just keeps on chugging. So you never want to put your full up, pull your foot off the gas, as they say. Also, in terms of something that may work well for us coming out of this, is that the country has definitely taken several steps to the more casual, which should help, obviously, because at our core, our brand's ethos is really looking smart even at your most casual. So, as I said, there are opportunities for retailers to improve their efficiencies or improve their positioning. They just need to take a moment, and think about it.
Great. And what I want to get back to kind of the country going more casual in a later question. But
Sure.
for first, I wanted to just talk about your omni-channel experience. So Untuckit has a strong reputation for its store experience, and it's a relatively new company and brand. So it was kind of born in the age of digital. And so, can you help us explain, even pre-COVID, what was your ideal omni-channel experience? What did you want to make available to customers as they were, moving between stores and digital?
So for us, pre and post COVID, our view of omni-channel hasn't really changed. And let me kind of explain what I mean. So for us, omni-channel is really about choice and convenience, right? So for the better part of the last 5 months, the omni-channel shift into online has really been around choice. Either there was no choice, stores were closed, or there was a very reduced appetite to venture into physical stores as states start to open through phase 1 and phase 2 and phase 3. Now, some of that we can't control. That's an individual preference, and we just need to make sure that we've got the infrastructure to be able to support somebody who used to shop in a store to push them online. Where we've spent more of our time, Scott, is around the convenience portion of that kind of omni-channel experience. And so, things like making curbside pickup or shop your local store through our website, making those available to our online shoppers is something that we've rolled out over the past few months. We also rolled out kind of a video shopping experience with a company called Hero that enables our store associates to first of all talk to customers via a chat feature. That could be just chat, it could be just video. And as the stores start to open up, these store associates do this, within the confines of the store. So you have a much more personalized shopping experience through our online channel than you probably ever would have had before.
Great. So, one of the other things that Untuckit's known for is, carefully listening to its customers when it comes to not just the omni-channel and the shopping experience, but actually the products that you're developing and putting out into the market. And there's a lot, I think, that customers have to say. They're going through a lot of change right now. Can you talk a little bit about, what have you been doing to listen to customers? Are there any new communication channels that you've dialed into? Have there's been anything like online communities that have allowed you to collect that customer sentiment? Because I think, just like you were talking about resetting the marketing and remeasuring again, it seems like there's a lot to relearn about what's going on in the minds of customers right now.
Right. No, and you're absolutely right. Keeping kind of close communications and two-way dialogue with our customers has been something that we've done since day one. And we are still kind of leveraging those channels. And the channels for us are queries or comments that come through customer service. They all get funneled up, packaged, and sent up to corporate. Our store associates are a great feedback mechanism. And end of the day, every day, our store associates put that feedback into emails, which are again swept up into corporate. What we learned is, and I mentioned this a little bit earlier, is that there has been a major shift to the casual. I don't know about you. Right now, you're wearing a button-down shirt. I think for the early stages of the working from home, we saw a lot of button-down shirts on Zoom. Then the shirts became polos, then they became t-shirts, and then a lot of people just weren't showing up on video anymore because they were tired of it. And so what we've seen is this massive shift to the casual. And so we're selling through during this time, products like I'm wearing one right now, are wrinkle-free and performance polos. Like, I live in these, and they're perfect for kind of working at home. Shorts are another category for us that have seen, really unbelievable penetration. As I said, that said, people are starting to go back into the office. They are starting to see more structure on the corporate side. And so lately, and I'll say lately, the last 30 days, we have seen an increase in sale of button downs, which are kind of our core product, as people are like, look, okay, it's been 5 months of sweatpants, tees, and weekly showers, right? It's time for me to start getting dressed again and showing up. And so I expect we're going to see more of that, and some of this pent up need to kind of refresh people's wardrobes.
And kind of going back to the shopping experience, you mentioned things like curbside pickup and I'm assuming buy online, pick up in the store for the stores that were open. How many of these programs were introduced after COVID hit? And what were some of the things you were hearing from customers that shaped them? Was there anything unique in the way that you were rolling some of these out during COVID that was answering some of these customer questions or comments?
Yeah, so most of those initiatives didn't start post-COVID. They were in process pre-COVID. However, all of those were rolled out during the pandemic. So what the pandemic did is effectively, Scott, put a catalyst in the need to have some of these things. So the buy online, pick up in store, if you think about it, there's two components for why customers want to do that. And candidly, the larger one among our customer base, for those that shop in stores, was supporting their local stores. And that goes and speaks volumes about our sales associates. We have tremendous sales associates throughout the US, Canada, and the UK, where customers do feel a sense of loyalty to the store. And so they wanted to be able to shop online, but shop a particular store, either a Madison Avenue store or a 900 North Michigan store, to support those stores. And so what we did was we effectively rolled them out, completed them in probably a third of the time that we had originally projected. Most of these were supposed to be rolled out for Q4. That was the original kind of timeline. But we recognized that we'll need to accelerate that in order to address, again, a demand among our customers.
That's great. It's interesting how these things have been a catalyst for so much, and there's been so much accelerated innovation happening right now. So kind of along those lines, I mean, there's a number of different kind of narratives on innovation that are being discussed in around digital retail and omni-channel. And I want to do a little bit of a quick fire. Some of these touched on a little bit, and I'd be interested in, not just your point of view overall, because you're implementing some of them, but also kind of your thoughts on, are these going to stick around in the long term? So maybe we'll start with curbside pickup, buy online, pickup in the store. You guys have implemented that. What's your thoughts on that sticking around long term? Do you see the levels going down in the future, or maintaining and sticking around?
Okay, so rapid fire, I would say definitely necessary, valued service to our customers. I see that increasing as time goes on.
And so another one is appointment shopping. So, having someone come in, make an appointment, go in, meet with a store associate during a certain time. Are you doing any of that? What's your point of view on that?
So we are, and we did roll out appointment shopping when we started to open stores. That's one area that I would have said valued and maybe short-term value for us. We're not a made-to-measure business, so this would be more about safety. However, I was surprised that the appointment shopping take-up rates were lower than I had expected. So valuable, certainly more valuable for some businesses than others. Just in ours, we'll continue to have it. It's something that for those that utilize it, it is important to them. And again, we talk about convenience and choice. But in terms of surprise, I would have thought more people would have been plugged into the appointment shopping than we've seen to date.
And it sounds like you're doing some of the video visits with store associates. So kind of talk about that, and I think our audience would be interested to hear. Are you using FaceTime, or is there a different kind of technology? And what's been the pickup rate on that? And do you think that's going to stick around? Is it just that feels like kind of fits into that convenience theme that you mentioned earlier?
We use a company called Hero that we partnered with to provide that video chat feature. And so it's more than just FaceTime. It has kind of an integrated retail support foundation where you can do things like refer people over to customer service and take orders and place orders. And that has been a tremendous success. Now, the challenge for us is how do we get a lot more volume to come through Hero. So if you think about what most websites will offer some sort of chat feature, that's pretty standard these days in e-com. Chat feature is one-dimensional, and you have a very small percentage of people that actually flow through the chat feature, right? Less than 1%. The Hero chat, we've seen, a exponential growth in the use of what I'll call our online chat feature, which is now supported by video and a lot more service-based kind of support. However, it would be great if about 100 times more people came through those channels, because what you see around the engagement, what you see around the average order value, what you see around the conversion rates, I mean, it's a stunningly higher number than the average that don't utilize these features.
Gotcha. All right. So two more on the quick fire. Virtual stores, like the 2020 retail version of Second Life, in augmented reality. So maybe we'll these are AR, VR.
Yeah. And I'll take those in order. So the virtual stores, look, I like that the concept of the virtual stores. For Untuckit, I think our customer might be slightly older than the age you would need to have a virtual store really play an important role in that kind of convenience equation. So for me, virtual stores, I would say not on Untuckit's radar of things to be looking at in 2020 or 2021, and unlikely 2022, but I'll never say never. And then the augmented reality, that's an interesting one. I love the idea of augmented reality. The challenge has always been that the tech has just not been there. So, and again, this is Untuckit specific answer. So for us, everything about the shopping experience is the fit, right? And so with augmented reality, the challenge is, sometimes the shirt's slightly askew, sometimes it's too far, sometimes it's too deep. And so it doesn't give the customer a true version or a true vision of what they would look like in the shirt. But I will say, and so by the way, we did look at tech for in stores, and we've looked at some tech, through our online site as well. But if the tech improves, I think augmented reality for us would be a really cool kind of 2021 initiative.
All right. Well, we have time for just one more question. And you mentioned you're an optimist, and I wanted to give you a chance to, share, what you've learned about the pandemic that makes you optimistic about, the future of retail and shopping.
So, look, I think if I were to boil it down, I think there's two, right? The first is that people want to get back into physical retail stores. You might not believe that, right? When you listen to the news, it's all pretty bad. But we ran a couple of surveys through our customer base to understand what their perspectives were on, would they return to stores, when would they return to stores, what's important for them if and when they do return to stores. And it was overwhelmingly leaning and skewed towards, I want to get back to your stores, right? I want to do it when I'm comfortable, but I definitely want to get back into your physical stores. And so when that survey came back and we started to parcel through the answers, and we just saw how overwhelmingly positive it was. I mean, it was like Christmas for me, right? It was the best news that I had heard in a long time, because I knew myself personally, I always try to think, like, I'm not that much different than the average person. And I was feeling extremely housebound, right? And kind of pent up. And so I was looking for opportunities as well. And just knowing that I'm not alone, right? There's a lot of people that want to get out of their houses. They want to shop. Physical shopping is a core component of the American DNA. So that was one. I think that to me was probably the single most optimistic thing. The other one is that we innovate, right? I think when you look at what's happened in the last 5 months, the amount of innovation that's come through retail is pretty staggering. It's a little sad that it took something like the pandemic to trigger some of this innovation, but look, it's here. And I think the retail, the American shopper will certainly be better for it and will benefit greatly from it.
Well, great. We're up to our 20 minutes, so thank you so much for joining and sharing these different points of view and lessons learned with our audience. And we really appreciate you being with us.
Scott, thanks again for having me, and look forward to speaking with you next.
Do a very, very quick poll. How is your company adapting with curbside pickup? The options are: we're considering the benefits, we're in the process of building it out, we rolled it out recently, or we're veterans at curbside pickup. Really interesting results here, just quickly before this panel takes over. The most popular answer by 43% was we rolled it out recently. So a lot of new adaptation of curbside pickup, which is very relevant for this group. The second most popular answer is we're considering the benefits. And we have about 22% of people who responded who are veterans. So congratulations to you all. You guys are ahead of the curve. So now I'd like to introduce our next panel, the presentation and then a panel, the top 4 accelerated learnings from curbside pickup. I think, Mark, you're going to lead this and then move into a discussion. Mark, I'll turn it over to you.
Just quick introduction for who's speaking with us today. So I'm Mark Trushell. I'm the Chief Customer Officer at Quantum Metric, where I was also an advisor for several years before joining the team. Before Quantum, I co-founded the first real-time voice-of-customer platform called Opinion Lab that helped hundreds of enterprises accelerate their digital presence over the past 20 years or so. We're also joined by Megan Hastings, who is a customer success business consultant here at Quantum Metric. Megan's experience also includes work as an analytics manager for HEB, informing curbside fulfillment strategies launching back in 2017. Prior to that, she was recognized by the auto care industry for extensive work in digital marketing and training. Summer Powell hails from North Carolina, where she works as a senior web analyst for Advanced Auto Parts. She prides herself in relentlessly finding data-driven answers for questions regarding online go-to-market strategies, and most importantly, sharing those insights with the entire organization. And then last here, we've got Tom Kraus, VP Digital UNFI. Tom joined in December 2016 with over 27 years of retail merchandising experience. Currently leads them in e-commerce and digital teams and B2B and B2C e-commerce business. And he's been working in the space since about 2006. So obviously we reviewed the poll, and it sounds like a lot of you have just rolled this out recently. So I guess this would be highly relevant. We have several people here who've done this for many years. So I'm looking forward to them sharing with us today. And despite not being here together in person, I do think we need to celebrate that we're in the middle of one of the, if not the fastest digital consumer transformations in history. Our habits are highly social, as we heard from Aaron on the previous session, and our shopping behaviors are influenced by our environment. And it all has a high impact on the way that we interact with products and services. And so with this, with this change, so is our shopping behavior. And the impact of our renewed sort of prioritization on safety and security has caused an unprecedented spike in digital interactions, while at the same time just crushing the brick and mortar. So let's go here. So I wanted to bring up a quick example of one of the leading Fortune 500 retailers. It's actual data, including the financial results. And if you look along the left, by all digital accounts, they just had their best quarter in history. So as we tend to hear quite a bit, every day is like Black Friday online these days. Traffic up 50%, online sales up over 80%, even conversion up 30%. But at the same time, with the physical location shuttered, this particular brand incurred a revenue drop of nearly 45%, or almost $2 billion of revenue in one quarter. So all teams, including digital, are being asked to do more with less. So really, what are we looking at to reconcile this dichotomy? Curbside pickup is one strategy to bridge the gap between the online and offline. And according to recent polls, the majority of people say they'll continue to use it long after this pandemic is gone. And so how do we build a more complex product like curbside pickup into the customer journey when by all accounts, customers are less engaged regardless of platform, less forgiving, and they exhibit higher friction in the digital channels? So today we're joined with a few people who've been involved in building out and optimizing curbside for many years. And we're going to kick it off with Megan, who's going to walk us through several examples and learnings on the digital side, and then wind in Tom and Summer as she goes. So Megan, I'll turn it over to you.
Awesome. Thank you, Mark. All right. So this moment in time has really required companies to think creatively on how to allow customers safe and quick access to products. So many companies raced to implement a curbside pickup program, and many were faced with the challenge of getting customers to learn something new. So with this presentation, we're going to take a look through the customer lens to understand how we can go about easing the transition to training folks to use curbside with these top 4 curbside essentials. And our first takeaway, or essential, is that communication is key. So good communication is really always a necessity, but especially when you're trying to implement something new. So you don't want to add confusion for your customers. So let's start at the beginning of the process, when a customer could even just be looking for something, a product or service through a search engine. So Summer is going to tell us how Advance Auto pivoted to meet customers before they even arrived at the site. Take it away, Summer.
So one quick adaptation we had to do once the pandemic was really in gear was realizing that buyer behavior has changed, and realizing that buyer behavior has changed in all aspects of digital marketing. So with our SEO strategy, whereas we had people before that might have been searching for battery testing, now they're looking for contactless battery testing. So, we may have had great rankings before in some of our key categories, but as these behaviors are shifting, you really have to be quick so that you can keep up with their changing needs. So having the COVID contactless different keywords incorporated into our SEO strategy has really helped us stay up to date with our industry.
Excellent. Alrighty, so we know that clear communication should continue throughout the shopping experience. So let's say a customer lands on your site and they're looking for more information on how to make a curbside order. So let's say they land on a learn more or an information page. So for curbside fulfillment, because they're trying to learn more about it. So we see that visitors who do this have a higher conversion rate. So that's telling us this type of customer is a motivated shopper. So we had one Fortune 50 company implement a curbside pickup page, learn more page, much like this one on the page, throughout their site, and had customers directed to it. So when visitors clicked on the banner and it took them to this page, the information on the landing page wasn't really clear, and there was no path forward for the customer to continue in their shopping experience. So in this case, we see in this interactions where people are clicking and tapping all over the page, this mobile web browser, that resulted in confusion, and then many of those customers ended up abandoning because there was no path forward. We see a good example of this though with Tom's company with UNFI or Super Value, showing a clear call to action with that green checkbox. So he's going to speak a little bit later in the presentation, but that's a good example of a clear call to action that would take somebody forward in the process. And now on to a PDP example. So with this one, we saw customers were unsure of how to select curbside delivery within a PDP or a product description page. So with this one, they clicked on free pickup in store on that text. And so remember that this may be a user's first engagement with your site. You know, they could have arrived from a campaign. So you need to make sure that pages like this clearly communicate to customers how to proceed forward in their journey. And with this next essential, that takes us to our next point, which is nailing down logistics. So once you've told your customers what curbside is, we need to make sure we solidify all logistics to ensure customer satisfaction. And for this piece, I'm going to hand the mic back over to the pioneers in our space that we have with us on the call, Summer and Tom, to talk about best practices. And so Summer is initially going to talk a little bit about product availability challenges, and then Tom is going to speak on how to continue that seamless experience at the physical location.
Thanks, Megan. So with the uptick in growth we've seen largely driven by curbside, we've definitely experienced some new pain points. So one of the new pain points we saw was a challenge in overcoming our spikes in out-of-stock messaging. We had more customers than ever before looking online first before going in store to buy, and logistics truly come into play. Although we have a check nearby stores option in our buy box, this does require an additional step by the user. We were able to see that over 22% of users who were getting this out-of-stock messaging were abandoning, and they weren't taking this next step to actually check availability at other stores. To overcome this pain point, we had a hypothesis that if a product is available at a store nearby and not at the user's selected store, that if we automatically populated that in our buy box as another option, that we may see a conversion rate lift. So once we were able to test this buy box change by adding the additional location nearby that had the product in stock, we increased our conversion in our paid search channel by 1.5% overall. So we saw some really great results just by this one simple change in our buy box, by just helping our consumers understand that we do have products available nearby, and we want to make sure that they know that we want to get the parts to them. So yeah, sometimes it's not about like huge warehouse DC inventory logistical changes, but it can just be something really small you do on your PDP to help overcome certain obstacles.
Awesome. Well, let's kick it over to Tom to talk a little bit about the pickup experience at the physical location.
Yeah, great. Thanks, Megan. Thanks, Summer. Let's go to, I think, the next slide.
My bad.
There we go.
Mm-hmm.
At Cub Foods, which is one of our wholly owned retail grocery chains, you know, we had a vision that we started working on actually several years ago to do pickup in the stores. And, you know, we learned a lot through the experience. It took us quite a while. We rolled it out across a fleet of 80 stores. And, you know, it took us about, a good 2 years to get that done. A lot of it had to do with just weather You can't do a lot of the things in the northern climates in the wintertime. So we were limited to kind of the summer construction season. But this was a diagram of one of the concepts that we had floated. So we had a nice parking lot sign, and then we had painting in the parking lot. Let's go to the next slide. And then this is the actual construction. On the left there, you can see it's in process. I mean, we had to get the parking lot cut and have electrical put in to light the sign. So there was quite a bit of work that had to go into it. And then on the right, you can see the finished product. And then you can see there the inset of the smaller sign that we had in place. And we actually started with smaller signs and then, moved to the more robust concept based on all of our learnings. And so, I think the key thing with this is, particularly now with COVID, it's incredibly important to have this as a service. The consumer has, to some degree come to expect it, and they also understand it today. And so you can use that to your advantage. When we started rolling this out, it was still pretty new to the consumer and, wasn't quite as understood. So, as you're going to do this, it's really critical to not think of this as an e-commerce initiative only. I mean, this is really the blending of digital and physical retail. And, so that means it's going to take a team in order to make this happen. And, there's the obvious pieces of it. I mean, obviously you're going to need your e-commerce team and your digital marketing team and, some of the folks from your regular marketing, and you're going to have to build some creative to figure out the concept. You're going to need your tech team, your store operations folks. Those are the obvious pieces. The less obvious pieces are the complexity that you start to get into with when you're talking about real estate and legal. And it's a complex project that's going to require some project management. If you're going to put signs in the parking lots of your stores, you're going to need landlord approvals. You're going to need city council approvals. So there's all of these pieces. And so, it's going to take a cross-functional team to make it happen. And you really need to then obviously get top management support to drive it, because you're going to have to tap people from several different departments. So that would be my first piece of advice is, to build a team, realize that, it's not an e-commerce only initiative, and you need to, bring your friends along for it. The great news is, today the customers know what to do. You can follow best practices, learn from your competition, learn from what the market leaders are doing. Guys like Walmart and Target, they've trained the industry on, and the consumer on how to do this. So if you follow their best practices and follow the lead of, most of your competitors out there, the consumer is going to know what to do when they get there. So, I would say it's definitely worth the effort. Particularly with COVID, it's going to be around for a while. So if you haven't started, it's not too late to start and go out and give it a shot.
Awesome. Thanks, Tom. All right. So our third point is to simplify checkout. So we know in times of stress or anxiety that goal and purchase-oriented shopping increases. So we saw some of our customers successfully implement express checkout options to bypass the cart to accommodate for these types of shoppers. But on the other end of the spectrum, we also saw checkout experiences that weren't as ideal. So it's important when the customer has made it all the way through the journey to checkout to ensure that the final stage is as easy as possible. So we saw this example of a customer on the cart page, and it wasn't clear how to opt into the curbside pickup when selecting BOPUS. So this customer repeatedly clicked on the unclickable greenish teal text that says curbside pickup option available. And only half of those customers actually made their way to click on the details page. So for many of these customers, instructions weren't even available until order confirmation. And then just going back to the first point, it's hard to simplify checkout to your customers if you haven't clearly communicated the process to your customers. So communication really is key once again, and it's important to let your customers know all the information they need to transact. And then with this example, we saw a top retailer experiencing an error in checkout when their customers tried to mix curbside pickup with another delivery fulfillment option. So even though their FAQ said that multiple fulfillment types were allowed, their customers received this oops pop-up that prevented them from moving forward and resulted in a 29% drop in conversion. So Quantometric was able to quickly identify and calculate that the drop was costing this client about $5K per day. So quantifying the impact, which takes us into our final point. So right now, businesses are changing so fast. There are so many opportunities for companies to consider creative and innovative approaches to the customer experience. But in order to be able to understand what's working or what's not, you have to quantify. And you have to quantify in terms of revenue and customer experience. So we know that it's possible to quantify through many tools, but businesses need instant visibility to be able to quantify in the moment, to be able to take action on what to focus their efforts on. And so in summary, regardless of if you're just beginning to think about curbside fulfillment for your company, or if you've already implemented it at your organization, these are some of the learnings from Advance, Unify, and our clients that may be able to help you. So communication is key. You're training a customer to do something new, so you've got to help them throughout the process. Nail down the logistics so the customer experience continues at pickup. Make sure you have signage telling your customers where to go and what to do. 3, simplify checkout. So if your customers are in the home stretch to complete their transaction, make sure it's easy for them to transact. And finally, quantify the impact. In order to be able to understand what's working and what's not working, you have to quantify. Thanks.
We are going to move into a fairly different topic right now, balancing brand and performance marketing on half the budget. I'm going to ask our moderator, Lisa, and our 4 panelists to go ahead and add themselves into here. But while they are doing that, let's see what you're all thinking about in terms of this idea of brand and performance. So the question is, so will retailers shift their marketing spend from performance to brand in the near future? And as a little bit of background, in our research that we released last week, we saw that the retailers and the brands were poised to make that shift to more brand marketing, but a lot of them put those plans on hold. So the question, what we're trying to understand is there still this pent-up demand to make that transition? Not entirely, but at least reshifting the balance from performance to brand. And let's see what folks are saying. So far, it's pretty split down the middle. It's weighing a little bit more on no, that you don't see a shift going towards marketing spend or towards brand marketing. So I'm going to close this poll. I am now would like to go ahead and introduce our next panel. So Lisa Gavalis, who I've known for many years, is kind enough to help us and moderate this conversation. She has a lot of her own experience in thinking about brand and performance marketing in digital roles and overall CMO roles and CEO roles. So, and now currently sitting on a number of board of director seats. So Lisa, why don't you pick it up from here, turn yourself off of mute, and let's get started with this conversation.
Okay. Thank you, Scott. Hopefully we will get Naomi on in a minute, or is she on?
I'm here.
Great. Okay. So the gang's all here. Hi, I'm Lisa Gavalis. This is an interesting topic. We've all been trying to figure out how to spend more money on brand over the years. And here we are with business down for most people, which often means marketing budgets are down. And when that happens, it's often easiest to go with last click, most proven, immediate response kind of marketing. But I think we all know that that's sort of a long-term lose. So what I'm really excited to talk about here is how my panelists all have really interesting ways of ensuring that branding is still alive. even in a time when, budgets might be down. So I'm going to ask everyone to introduce themselves first. I'll start. Lisa Gvalas, you heard Scott say I'm an old dog. He and I have been around together for a long time. I've run a couple companies. I've run marketing for a couple companies. When I was at Bloomingdale's, I led the team that started Bloomingdales.com in 2001 and also launched Express.com in 2008. So I've been in bricks and mortar most of my life, but with a bent towards digital. So it's super interesting as things have progressed incredibly over the years to sort of watch the evolution of everything from social media to sort of how you get in touch with your customers. I am on the board of Forever 21, True Religion, a couple others. And so what I'm hoping to get from each of my panelists first is, who are you? Where are you today? And sort of how you got there. So I'm going to start with Grace, because Grace, on my camera, you're just to my left.
Perfect. Hi, I'm Grace. I'm currently VP of Growth Marketing at The Skim. So some people may be most familiar with The Skim's daily newsletter. We serve an audience of millennial women, just all different ways and tools to make their lives smarter. And I've, for the last 15 years or so, have been working across e-commerce and media companies. I think one thread of my experience is working at brands that have their heart or their start as communities and have built businesses on top of that. So I'm very new to The Skim, week 3, full disclosure. But most recently, right before this, I was at Food 52, which is a food and home website that had a really strong community, and then built a commerce business on top of that. So yeah, that's me. Happy to be here.
Thanks. Thank you. Greg, I'm going to go this way.
Hi, everybody. Good afternoon. I'm Gregory Batchelor. I'm the VP of Marketing at AB Tasty. We are an experience optimization platform. And basically what we do is we help e-commerce businesses deliver the best brand and product experiences on all their digital channels. So we do that through experimentation, so traditional testing, personalization, and product feature management. So the ability to launch new features very quickly on mobile apps, for example. And what we do at the end of the day for our customers, we help them increase their conversion rates on their websites and increase their bottom line. And I'm in Chicago, Lisa. So hi, everybody.
Thank you. Lisa.
Hi, everyone. Hi, so I'm Lisa Leach. I'm the Chief Marketing Officer here for Rockport. We're a parent company owning 5 brands of comfort-based footwear. Rockport is our biggest brand. We also have Reef Sandals, Aravan, Dunham, and Cobb Hill. My background is a little unique, actually, for footwear. As any of you who know, the footwear industry does tend to recruit from within its own. But I've been here at Rockport for about a year now after a 15-year career in marketing for food and beverage companies and some personal care as well. So clearly this topic is fascinating for me because in those companies, mostly what I did was brand marketing. That was 100% of my budget since we didn't have our own retail. So now coming to Rockport, I think it's a great opportunity for me personally to sort of take brand marketing all the way down through to conversion. It's just been fantastic. But I'm well, we'll get into the topic of brand versus performance marketing, but I have a bias obviously for my background over brand marketing.
Thanks, Lisa. And Naomi, from above or wherever you are.
Hello. Yes, I come to you from the heavens. I'm sorry, we're going to blame technology today, but I am here and hopefully you can all hear me. So I've been in social media for the past 10 or so years, but I currently lead the social strategy team for Curate Retail Group, focused most specifically on our video commerce businesses, which are QVC and HSN. My team is responsible for developing, executing, creating new opportunities that grow our business, that tap into the powers, the amazing powers of social media.
Thank you. So I'm really excited because we, as you can imagine, we did a little dry run, talked to everybody already. And so everyone comes from a very different perspective, but I think there's a lot to learn in all of them. So let's start with, how does your company think about branding? How did they think about it pre-COVID? And if it's changed, how do they think about it post-COVID? And Lisa, I'm going to tee it up with you because you already sort of started getting down the
I'm helping. I was just no, so again, I think Rockport is an interesting, I mean, clearly this is an interesting year for all of us. Compounded here at Rockport, we are in the middle of a turnaround. This company is about 2 years in now to a complete business kind of turnaround overhaul. And we had just been working on sort of a new branding. We had developed a new brand strategy based really deeply in really deep, rich consumer insights. We kind of set a new North Star for the brand, had gone through a pretty significant brand repositioning project and new branding identity work. So brand, right? That was what we all talked about for the last fall and into January, February of this year. And the plan is to roll it out this summer. So yeah, clearly COVID was a bit of a sucker punch to all of that work. But what we actually haven't missed a beat. The way we sort of have been thinking about the last few months is that COVID has just been this great accelerator. A lot of what, coming in about a year ago, what we knew we needed to do was use data, use consumer insights and use data to inform our decisions. Be more agile in our content creation and our branding work based on that data and based on real-time information, what we're hearing from our consumers and what's working. And so those three things were all where we wanted to move the marketing department and honestly the whole company. We wanted to move in that direction and we were slowly getting there. And then COVID happened and we had to. It was, survive or die. So it was, it happened a lot faster than I think it would have been if we hadn't had this crisis. So, we're seeing it as an opportunity for us now to kind of sync up brand and performance marketing in a way that hadn't been done before. They were operated as different silos, budgets were distinct, the teams were distinct, and we've now just smushed it all together because it's one and the same now. How we talk to our consumers has to be done through the lens of what's the brand strategy, what's the branding, and then how do we actually activate it with the consumer in the best possible way.
That's great. I can't wait to hear your answer to your next question. That's really impressive, right? I mean, you took proverbial lemons and made lemonade, right? Figured out a way. And that's, I think, what all of retail is trying to figure out. I mean, things are so tough for so many. How do we survive and how do we think differently? And it sounds like you guys have really been doing that. Super interestingly, I think Greg has a good story too. Tell us about how your company thinks about brand and how some of your clients are thinking about it.
Yeah. Thanks, Lisa. So I think we all agree that brand is a great uplift to any type of performance marketing that you're doing, and I think a lot of brands, including us, and I think some of you will talk about this, but building the emotional connection with the consumer, building that story, building the why buy from us is what we've been seeing in the past few years. And I think a lot of you guys on this session today work on these things, but it's like, why you exist, why you're relevant in the marketplace. And I think we've been seeing a lot of businesses really focusing pretty heavily on that in the past few months and years. I think the investments on pure brand projects are going to go pretty down in the next few months, unfortunately. And I think, the maybe CFOs or CEOs look at our marketing costs pretty significantly. And I think performance marketing is definitely on the roadmap in the next few months during this pandemic. And whilst the emotional piece is still very important, what we're seeing is that a lot of companies are trying to differentiate in the marketplace. And they do that through technology. So we have companies like Curology, Pros, Avon, Oral-B, these type of brands, Neutrogena, for example, these type of brands embed technology in their connection with the consumers to be able to deliver better experiences. So that's what we're seeing. And the quick example I want to use is, for example, Neutrogena using their 360 app or Skin ID app that you can take a picture and, for example, get your skin, if it's a bit greasy in your forehead versus your cheek, you'll receive a personalized mask. And that's the type of thing that a lot of brands are doing today, is technology infused in their marketing.
That's awesome. Finally, technology has caught up with the desire to be personalized, even if we are relatively mass merchants. That's terrific. Thank you. And Naomi, sorry, I need like a little picture of you.
I know, sorry. So sorry.
All good.
So, you can hear me, great. So for us, I think QVC and HSN, we're obviously very fortunate in this current climate that we have a brand that really lends itself well to shopping from home. And we've been doing that for decades now, since we've been around. And we obviously have this like a very differentiated business model from any of the other retailers that are out there. That's core to who we are as a brand, given that we have multiple networks that reach hundreds of millions of homes every day. So that's really both our brand marketing and our direct response performance marketing all kind of combined in one, which is very unique. But we've always been, I think, like at the core about storytelling and connection. And it's just been, I guess, remarkable is probably the best word, crazy, to see this thing that's forced us all to be apart from each other, has encouraged us and so many other brands to reinvent ways for us to stay close to each other and close to our customers. And I know Grace just said this word as well, but we've always leaned on our community. They're our superpower, and now more than ever, people want to feel like they're part of something bigger, and we work hard to bring our customers into our brand to be a part of it. So I think before and after COVID, it's always been about people. It's the word that we hear all around our building and our homes, I guess now today, people and telling their stories. So while we've always supported, say, entrepreneurs by providing them with a platform to share their products, most recently we did that by shining a light on small businesses that were directly impacted by the COVID crisis. We donated our airtime through a partnership with the NRF Foundation. So that's just one small example, but I think it lends itself to the point that it's really exactly the same in a way, but just with even more intentional in supporting our broader community and ensuring that we're providing a value to them that goes much further than a product that they buy from us. So really, really, community is at the heart.
That's terrific. So many people and places are in need. It's great to be able to participate in that as part of who you are as a company. Mm-hmm. Grace, you've got a great story. Your company was a brand before it was a business. So tell us about your experiences, either where you are today or Food 52.
Sure. So I did the really fun career transition during a pandemic, which 10 out of 10 do not recommend. But sometimes that's the way it goes. But so I can talk a little bit about pre-pandemic, actually, I guess regular normal world. When I was going into 2020 planning at Food 52, I was feeling fairly bullish about testing more out of home. We were looking at bringing the commerce experience to real life and all the different incarnations that could take, and building an out-of-home strategy that would have a branding halo, but then also drive to these sort of different activations that we were planning. So obviously, none of that came to fruition. What we started to do, and if you remember sort of early pandemic days when we were all first home and everyone was making sourdough bread, it feels like years ago. But we were forced to kind of stop what we were doing and create lots of content from home. And it was all in that thread of serving the community with what they need now. And then that mix, a lot of our energy had been towards the commerce business, and that didn't leave, but we couldn't. That moment wasn't just about selling pans. It was about really providing people some respite, some diversion, and also something active they can do and feel good about, trying to be kind of their bright spot on their internet. And because we served around food and home, it felt like we were well positioned to do that. So we really, really pivoted leaned into our community core during those early pandemic days, and just building off of something Naomi said about like people wanting to be attached to something a little bigger, took that moment to spotlight small makers that we had sold who were impacted by retail shutting down in those early days, and build storytelling around them to get our community to then buy online, because in many of them were the only online only retailer that they worked with. So that was really exciting. And I'm seeing of those very early days of the Skim, still that same spirit of really leaning into the community core. Like that's this kind of special brand sauce, I think, for Food 52 and also for the Skim. So that I think is so it's not necessarily something new that we're doing, but it's like really leaning into what people need, listening to feedback, and building experiences they can really attach themselves to. That's kind of the core brand strategy that this moment has made very apparent is super important.
Yeah, I mean, both of your businesses have really understood the community, and I think that's incredible. So, which brings me sort of to my last question. All of you have figured out both pre and post COVID things that we can do better, things that we're doing better because of COVID. We've had to work our way around and be a little scrappy. We need to confess that my sourdough starter, which I did have, like everybody else, is now dead. So must be on to like phase 2. But the lesson learned, I need to know what they are. And Naomi, I'm going to start with you.
All right. You didn't forget me this time. I love it.
Are you there?
I'm here. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. So
yes.
lessons learned. So I think from my perspective, I think one of the biggest things that like most resonates with me isn't necessarily something that's new to us or that we've learned right now, but the current climate has really forced us to double down on it. And again, just that's really focusing and redefining our community. And I think the key lesson is tapping them as an extension of our brand. So we want to be a brand that stands for something and that brings people together despite us all being forced apart right now. So some examples are investing in our customer advocacy programs at QVC and HSN. That allows customers who are very best advocates, of course, to not only earn money right now, which is especially welcome for many, but also to give them and encourage them to tell the story of our brand and the products that we sell on their own social platforms. So on top of that being a driver for our business, it's also a source of content for us that we can use on other channels, which has been an awesome savings for us. We've done things like facilitate Skype calls with some of our hosts, our program hosts on air, and a few of our customers that have literally elicited tears of joy and thankfulness for being a brand that's going above and beyond and doing things like that during this crazy time in our world. We've also leaned in pretty heavily to our vendor and brand partners and encourage them to create video at home, maybe a sourdough starter, Lisa, and then they'll send us that content and then we'll edit it to ensure that it's brand right to share to our channel. So just thinking about unique and creative ways to do what we've done, but do it differently. And in many cases, it's even more authentic than it was before. A way that we're connecting that back to a direct ROI is retargeting the audiences that we build from that content on YouTube, and then ensuring that it's surfaced across the Google network with product. So just connecting branded performance there. So bottom line, just really thinking about not only the perspective of our customer from the experience that they'll have as a shopper, but thinking of them as an extension of our brand. And I really think that with the speed with which everything's changing right now, that brands that create a way to foster a community, again, as Grace shared, that's bigger than just shopping is really what's going to ensure their long-term success and continue to stand out from the rest.
I love that story. I mean, you've basically taken your vendors and your customers, wrapped them in a bow with your company and said, we are together, this company, and we'll help make it grow. I think it's a great story.
Absolutely.
Let's stick with sort of that theme and go back for a second, because she's got a similar approach to understanding that community.
Yeah, for sure. Like if there's, I mean, sort of the takeaways
Can you hear
there
me, Grace?
again. Yes, I can hear you. You can hear me? Yes. So just doubling down, and I think even if, I mean, I've had the benefit of, even before the Skim and 52, I was at the Knot. That's sort of where I kind of started my career as a marketer. So I've seen sort of taking a community and growing businesses on top of it. But I think now, I mean, technically I'm a performance marketer, I guess. But I think brand now is more important than ever. And then getting back to the idea around budget and spending, thinking about that as resources instead of necessarily media budget. And what can you invest in building that community and building that dialogue? And I think organic builders of that are just so much more powerful, and can be so much more powerful, especially if you're trying to kind of decide how to use a media budget. And because I think right now that relationship, which I think is the core of what a brand is way more important now than it probably even was before COVID. You know, it's so much more important to get back to those fundamentals. How are you serving people? How are you engaging in that dialogue? What you can build around it, and you can use organic channels for it, which is great. You know, like how can you make your social engagement more robust by talking back? You know, more innovative ways to use email, blogs, etc. So I think that this is a really unique period of time to make those time investments and resource investments, and then thinking about, you know, putting my performance hat on for a minute again, thinking about how that can bring down your cost of acquisition when you are going for that more direct response type of media.
Okay, well, I got the 5 minutes. So between the two of you guys, we're gonna go Lisa first, and we're going to clean up here. Tell us what you learned.
Yeah, Greg, I'll leave you plenty of time.
Lisa,
don't worry. Yeah, can you hear me, guys?
I'm Lisa G. Lisa.
Got it. Yeah, lovely. So I think my lesson learned is I can't predict what's going to happen in the next month, in the next 2 months. I have no prediction anymore. You know, I tried throughout this process to try to guess when things are going to happen. You know, we sell an office shoe. For the most part, that's the bulk of our brand is in shoes that people wear to work. People aren't going to work right now. We thought that maybe they would be back to work in August, and they're not. You know, don't think they're going to be back in September. So our big lesson learned is we can't plan ahead. So we got to be, again, very, very data driven, and really look for the signals, look for the demand on a daily basis, and try to understand where the consumer is. That's step one. Step two is then we need to be agile in how we both develop content and develop marketing plans and tactics to go after where the consumer is at this moment. And we're just living very much day to day. And luckily I have experience with that because I have 2 young kids. So you just learn, you can't plan ahead, have no control. So you just go with it.
Absolutely. And I love it. Nimble has always been a criteria. The fact that this is reinforcing that and requiring us to do, we're gonna see the silver lining. Maybe not tomorrow, but we're gonna see the silver lining. This Greg, for cleanup, tell us lessons learned.
All right, quick lessons learned. So what we've seen a lot with the brands is communication was a big thing with COVID, of course. We saw in a previous session that some of the communication was very important, but any communication on the website, all the digital channels, where to call support or where to return something, stores closing. So communication was the number one thing, and communicating fast and effectively was the number one thing that our brands did. And then there's a few trends that are appearing. I think marketers' resources are a little bit stretched, and we need to deliver a lot for our businesses. And any technology with automation or helping you, figuring out the right segments or the right data to do the market, to market to these people is very important. We're seeing a lot of personalization trends as well. You need to be able to deliver the right message to the right people at the right time. That's up there for all the customers we're talking to. And the last thing is, I think performance marketing is going to be back for the next, next few months pretty heavily. There was a Gartner interview from CMOs saying that they expect their spend to go back in 18 to 24 months. So there's still going to be a lot of scrutiny, I think, on some of the marketing budgets and ensuring that if you spend $1, look how much you get back. Thanks.
That's
Lisa,
awesome.
are you still
I think
there?
You're right. Lisa, something you said before that I don't think you said today. I am. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Am I lost?
We hear you.
No. It says
You're
I'm
good.
unstable. Okay.
We hear you, Lisa.
Okay. So Lisa, one of the things you said to me I thought was great is that you're using you're using brand words and all the stuff that you learned in branding in your performance marketing, even if we have to lean on performance, all the things we've learned about branding and all the unique ways we think about branding, I think we can infuse better than we have in the past.
Absolutely.
Thank you all.
That's been part of the kind of bringing together that kind of brand and performance marketing. So we're sort of one team now, and we're infusing as much as we can all of the branding strategy and insights into any performance marketing we're doing.
That's
critical.
awesome. Thanks. Scott, back to you.
All right. Well, thank you all. And it made a lot of sense for you guys to end on lessons learned, because that is a great transition to our final session. You guys can stick around to answer some audience questions. I saw some come in, but you can turn your mics and your cameras off. We are thrilled to have Jason Goldberg, retail geek Jason Goldberg, walk through lessons learned and thoughts for the future. But we've been asking these live polls, and they've been on some fairly serious topics. So we thought we'd have a little more fun with this name. So, Jason puts retail geek in quotes related to his name. But our question is, should he change his name legally, his middle name, to retail geek? So let's open up that poll and see if we can get Jason, if we give him enough encouragement, they'll actually go and do this and go to the courthouse if it's open and make this change. Oh my gosh, it's like 100% I'm seeing. Nobody thinks, there's one person that maybe that's his mom that came in here and doesn't want him to change his name. All right, so I'm going to close that poll, but it's right now 87%. So take note, Jason. Your fans have spoken. Let's bring Jason over to us.
Thanks so much, Scott. I'm super excited to talk to everyone. I feel like everyone's paid their dues over the last 2 days, and so now they get that delicious dessert that you've been waiting for. And it's funny that everyone wants me to change my name to Retail Geek. My mom and my wife are both lobbying for me to change my last name to something else. So interesting perspective there. But enough about me. Today we're going to talk about some of the lessons we learned over the first 3 months of COVID, and maybe a few thoughts for the future as we continue to evolve commerce in this like highly dynamic landscape. So let's jump right into it. So let's turn to COVID. The way I like to think about COVID is really not something that dramatically changed consumer behavior and created all new behaviors, but rather a time machine that propelled us all 5 years in the future in about 5 minutes. And I'm going to give you some examples of why I see it that way. So in the highly unlikely event that any of you don't get enough of me in the next 20 minutes, the great news is there's like 300 more hours of me on the interweb. So my good friend Scott Wingle and I record this weekly podcast, cleverly called The Jason and Scott Show. It has horrible SEO because Scott's parents spelled his name wrong. They spelled it with only one T. But we have had many of the speakers from this week's event as guests on the podcast, including Scott, who's been a multi-time guest. So if in the event you want to hear more of these kinds of conversations, they're available on the podcast at any time. But enough about that. Let's talk about COVID and the impact it's having on retail and commerce. And the way I like to think about COVID's impact is not really that it dramatically changed consumer behavior and invented all new behaviors. Rather, it dramatically accelerated a bunch of trends that we were already seeing in the marketplace. So I like to think of COVID as a time machine that propelled us 5 years into the future in about 5 minutes. And I'm going to give you a few examples of why I see it that way. COVID has accelerated a lot of new consumer behaviors, primarily as a result of us all being forced to shelter in place. I have broken those down into 6 big buckets, and we're going to walk through them. So the first one is the transition to digital shopping. This is hopefully pretty obvious to everyone in this webinar, but depending on how you define retail, before COVID, Forrester felt that about 16% of all retail happened online. That's excluding gas and automobiles. In the first month of COVID, where we started to shelter in place, that jumped up to about 16% of all sales were online. And now in April, May, it's like 25 to 28% of all sales are online. If you take out food and gas, over 30% of all retail sales are online right now. So we've had this dramatic shift to digital. And more important even than where people are buying things is where people are making buying decisions. So before COVID, Forrester had this interesting metric called digitally influenced sales. And they essentially said, hey, 17% of all sales are online, but another 36% of sales are digitally influenced, meaning you use Google Maps to find a store, you used Amazon to read ratings and reviews, you used a manufacturer's website to see ingredients, you used all these digital tools to help you make that purchase decision. So 36% influence plus 17% online meant that a little over half of all purchase decisions in the US, which is about $3.7 trillion of sales a year, were digitally influenced. And now, as a result of COVID and that online percentage being higher and the digitally influenced percentage being higher, over 70% of all consumer spending is now influenced by all the digital touch points that all of you in the audience influence for your brands every single day. And so the big takeaway from this slide is we're all wildly underpaid, and digital is certainly the future. You may have noticed the CEO spending a lot more time in your office than he or she did a little while ago, and this is of course why. And a lot of the leaders in our industry have recognized this as well. Brian Cornell, the CEO of Target, says that COVID has accelerated digital demand at Target's business at least 3 years. The chief digital officer at L'Oreal talked about they're now preparing for a world in which half of all their sales are online, 80% of all their touch points are digitally influenced, so even much bigger penetration than we talked about in general. And Nike in their recent earnings call said that they're now expecting a business where 50% of their sales are direct online sales to Nike. That's about 30% that they're at today. So that's a significant shift for them. And essentially, we're moving to this digital first world for commerce, which is something we all predicted, but it's now happening much faster than any of us foresaw. A lot of new digital shoppers' first experience wasn't so awesome. And this even impacted the best operators in the world. So, you know, Amazon, half of their sales is a marketplace. So they have third-party sellers. When you buy something from a third-party seller, you get a chance to review that seller and say how good the experience was. And on average, about 94% of marketplace sales have favorable reviews. And you can see once COVID kicked in, 94% dropped down immediately to 87%. They had a 7% drop in customer satisfaction directly as a result of COVID, because even Amazon wasn't able to keep up with delivery promises. They were having supply chain challenges. And, you know, really, we have lots of new customers into the space, but not the world's greatest experience. And the other challenge we had is it really put a strain on margins. So Andy Dunn, the founder of Bonobos, has this great quote I use: e-commerce is awesome as long as you don't care about EBITDA. And that's particularly true in some of these categories like grocery, where we jumped from 3% to 12% penetration, but that we probably lost a lot of money on all those digital sales. And you think about it, if you're a retailer like Walmart and you sold some general merchandise online and some groceries online. The groceries were less profitable. And because of COVID, the mix shifted dramatically from general merchandise to grocery. So you shifted to this less profitable mix. You were delivering all those products versus in-store pickup. And so that you had a more expensive channel where you lost margin. Another thing that we'll explore a little bit more is customers tended to shift to larger pack sizes, which had incremental costs associated with them. And of course, every retailer had to pay a lot of bonuses to their labor in their warehouses and their stores. They had to pay for extra cleaning precautions, extra equipment. And so while we had this nice spike in digital demand, we had huge strains on our unit economics and our profitability as a result. So total mixed bag around the shift to digital. At the same time, we had some significant impacts in the brands that customers choose and brand loyalty. Before COVID, you might have been a really loyal Charmin shopper that exclusively bought Charmin toilet paper. During COVID, you were thrilled to just get any toilet paper. So if a retailer did what we call forced substitution and sent you their store brand of toilet paper instead of Charmin, you were happy to try the store brand of toilet paper. And many customers that were forced into these trials ended up adopting the new brand. I know there's a lot of talk about how great artificial intelligence is in retail, and we all have these artificial intelligence recommendation engines. I'd like to point out that they were not perfectly awesome at these substitutions when we had all these strains on our supply chain. So this is kind of my wall of fame. There's a customer at Walmart that tried to order some yogurt, and instead they got Christmas ornaments. There was a customer at Kroger that tried to order crunchy peanut butter, and they got glue sticks, which at least they're both sticky, so maybe that made some sense. And then my favorite is there was a customer that ordered from Tesco in the UK, and they were trying to order baby wipes, and instead they got Bell's whiskey, which I imagine those new parents might have been okay with that substitution. We'll never know. But in many cases, when those customers were forced to substitute brands, they actually adopted the new brand permanently. So we had a lot of brand promiscuity and people changing brands and trying new brands more so than we would traditionally see. At the same time, we saw a new kind of brand loyalty. People were particularly gravitating to traditional comfort brands, right? And so you have Miller Coors talking about how all the demand shifted from their micro brews and their sort of premium products to what they call dad beer, those core brands like Miller and Coors. Prior to COVID, you wouldn't eat any food that had any artificial colors or flavors. During COVID, you want Kraft macaroni and cheese and Campbell's soup. You went back to all these comfort foods. And so you had this kind of dichotomy where you were less loyal to your traditional brands, and you shifted to these popular products that maybe were a little less in favor, right? You bought cleaning products before, you wanted organic cleaning products with no quote unquote chemicals in them. I always chuckle at that because I think water is a chemical technically. But in the middle of COVID, you wanted the good Clorox bleach. Like you did not want the organic green cleaning products, right? So a related behavior we saw is what I call pantry stocking. And obviously the first version of this was the hoarding, where people were buying a lifetime supply of toilet paper. And at first you might think that was great news for the toilet paper companies. It actually wasn't, because they essentially, customers aren't using more toilet paper than they ever had before. They just bought a year's supply in advance. And so what that meant is the toilet paper companies sold a year's supply of toilet paper in the least profitable way imaginable. And now their comp sales are going to stink because everybody's got a house full of toilet paper. And they're not going to buy more for a year. And so this is creating an interesting behavior, marketing change I'll talk about in a minute. But as the pandemic progressed, the purchase pattern shifted from those irrational stock ups to more rational stock ups. Customers wanted to fill their pantry with shelf-stable products. So the most popular products in COVID were dry pasta, canned foods, evaporated milk, things you could put in your pantry to guard against potential supply chain shortages or inaccessibility of grocery stores. And so all these brands sold bigger than usual quantities of products, but consumers aren't consuming those products at bigger than usual rates. And so now you have a bunch of brands that are thinking about marketing campaigns, not to get you to buy more, but to use what you already have, right? So reminding you of the cool arts and craft projects you can do with your kids with a Kraft mac and cheese, reminding you about the great dips you can make with those Campbell's soup. And I'm proposing that the toilet paper companies really lean into Halloween and convince kids to toilet paper a lot of houses to help families work their way through their inventories of excess toilet paper. And we're literally seeing this in the economics of companies. So when Chewy did their earnings this quarter, they talked about $90 million in incremental sales that they got from the so-called COVID cohort of people that were buying bigger sizes and stocking up more than they did before. And in Chewy's case, they believe that that's a permanent shift in behavior and that they're going to keep selling the larger bags of dog food. So this brings us to our fourth behavior, which I call nesting. This is all the things that we're forced to do at home and the new behaviors we adopt as a result. So before COVID, you got about 60% of your calories from the grocery store, 40% from restaurants. Right now, you're getting over 90% of your calories from the grocery store. And obviously, as things open up, restaurants hope to get back those customers, but the grocery stores hope to never give back that customer, right? And they know they're not going to keep 90% of your stomach, but they hope that they're maybe going to keep 70% instead of the pre-COVID 60% level. And so they're doing all kinds of marketing to lock in those new behaviors. Did you learn how to cook during COVID? Did you buy cookware? Did you buy an Instapot? Well, let's keep making stuff. Let's keep eating at home. On the last day of work, before you sheltered in place, you stopped at Best Buy on your way home from work and you bought a monitor for your home office and you ordered a comfy chair for your home office. When your office opens back up and you feel safe going to your office, you may still want to use that home office more often. Your employer bought a license for Zoom and a VPN. So you may not commute to work as often as you used to. And a lot of commerce is tied to that commute. If you're McDonald's or Starbucks, you rely on customers going to work to stop there on their way for breakfast. If you're a gas station, you rely on customers using that gas to get to work. If you're a convenience store, you rely on customers stopping at that gas station next to the convenience store. So there's a whole cascading effect that happens because people now have more tools and competencies to work at home. If you bought a Peloton bike, as millions of people did during COVID, you're less likely to renew your gym membership when this is over. If you were in market for a new mattress during COVID, you only you had in your consideration set companies that could deliver mattresses to home. And now you're out of market for the next 7 years. So if you're a brick and mortar mattress retailer, you missed a whole cohort of demand as a result of COVID. And of course, we all learned how to give ourselves haircuts and do our own nails and give ourselves pedicures. And if you were a woman that bought some equipment to do that, maybe you bought a UV light to set the gels on your nails, you may go to the salon less often, even when the salon is available to you. So all these nesting behaviors, the companies that won business as a result of nesting are now marketing to lock that nesting in and keep as much of that business as they can and not revert to pre-COVID levels. So you sort of have an interesting battle there. This next one is about health. And before COVID, when I talk to retailers, I always talk to them about when that customer parked in their parking lot and got out, the last thought going through that customer's head before they walked into your store was, are they going to have the item I want at the price I want, right? And so that was, something that we were addressing with retailers. Today, when a customer visits a retail store, the most important thought on their mind before they walk in that store is, will this visit kill me? Will this be the visit that gets me sick and causes me to have a bad outcome, right? And so retailers are all fighting on this new dimension of making stores feel safe for customers. And we're seeing all kinds of changes in behavior as a result of customers not feeling safe. Customers are using ATMs 32% less because they don't want to touch those public keypads and those public amenities. Customers aren't using customer affinity programs. They're not willing to type their phone number into the scary pin pad at Jewel. And we're now seeing retailers invent new experiences. 7-Eleven is rolling out pay with your voice so that customers can fill gas at a 7-Eleven and not have to touch the pin pad on the gas terminal. Some gas stations are bringing back full service gas because customers don't want to touch the pump. There used to be all kinds of amenities in the store, like food samples, salad bars, bulk sales. Now all those things are going away, and real new companies are inventing new ways to provide some of those amenities. So we now have robotic salad machines that make a salad on demand and deliver it in a sealed container to you to replace the salad bars that grocery stores used to have. We used to drive customers to the fitting room in apparel stores because we felt if they tried on the clothes, that they were more likely to buy them. There's a cognitive bias called the endowment effect that kicks in when you try on the clothes and you're reticent to give them back. Now nobody wants to use the dressing rooms, and so retailers are inventing new ways to do fitment. We're using a backscatter radar to measure customers and let them put the clothes on a virtual mannequin of themselves as a way to do fitment for customers that don't feel safe using a dressing room. And we're inventing totally new contactless ways to deliver our service. At a boutique Jenny's ice cream, you're shopping for flavors on a menu board outside the store, ordering them on your mobile phone, and just going in the store to pick up your ice cream, instead of the old world where you'd look at the ice cream in the store and try samples. There are now websites dedicated to rating the safety of different retailers, and there's some fear that consumers are going to pick retailers based on the safety practices that they've implemented. Do they force customers to wear a mask? Do employees have good compliance with wearing a mask? If they have one-way aisles, do the employees follow the one-way aisle rules, right? And usually by this point of all these trends, I've really depressed a lot of my audiences, and I'm highlighting all these negative things that are happening. So I like to throw in one favorable trend to kind of wrap up this section. And that's that every pet in America has been adopted. So if you're a lover of animals, good news. The overwhelming majority of all animals now have a happy new home. They're getting to spend a lot of time with their new owners. And obviously, this is a little bit of a joke, but this is another interesting commerce opportunity. We just created the largest new cohort of pet owners in the history of the United States of America. Chewy estimates that 1.6 million new pet owners were born as a result of COVID. And what's interesting about all those pet owners is they all learned to get their food and their cat litter and all their pet amenities digitally instead of going to a PetSmart or a Petco like they might have in the previous world. So we've born these new digital consumers in some cases. And of course, we saw a huge uptick in adoption of online pet sales from 22% to 31%. So wrap all this up and you say, what does the future of retail look like? And the answer is nobody knows. Doug McMillan, who's a lot smarter retailer than I am, he's the CEO of Walmart. He's fond of saying, it's going to be a bumpy road. There's going to be a lot of starts and stops. We don't know when the true health risks of COVID will abate. We don't know when the psychological ramifications will abate. And we don't know how long the economic implications might linger beyond the health or psychological implications. So there's a lot of unknowns. All retailers are having to adopt this practice that I call scenario planning, where they prepare for a wide variety of different eventualities. But a couple of things I'm going to leave you with that we know are changing. It's going to be a long time before retailers are allowed or feel safe letting as many customers in their store as they used to. A busy Costco might get 3,000 customers an hour on a weekend. They're not going to let 3,000 customers in that store right now. It just isn't safe, and customers wouldn't feel safe. A huge department store like Harrods in the UK could get 80,000 customers in a day. Now it's taking them more like a month to get 80,000 customers. So no retailer is going to be able to make comps or have a good revenue if they're exclusively relying on selling to people that walk in the store. So they're all primarily focused on selling to people that don't walk in the store and getting the people that do walk in the store to buy more and get out more quickly than they used to, right? So this obviously leads to curbside pickup as being a primary tool that retailers are adopting. Adobe said that curbside pickup has been up almost 200%. In the pandemic. We've seen Google roll out new curbside pickup features in Google Shopping. Best Buy very impressively deployed curbside pickup in 800 stores in 48 hours. So we're seeing the future, at least for the next 18 months, is retailers really leaning into these digital ordering and curbside pickup in a ton of categories. And one of the interesting ramifications of customers not wanting to go to stores as much and not feeling safe in stores is that customers are doing fewer store trips and they're buying more stuff at each store. And what that means is they're picking different stores. If you were a customer that got your organic produce from Whole Foods, you got your shelf-stable groceries from Kroger, and you got your alcohol from Total Wine, as I know Scott and Alan are big fans of their Total Wine liquor. In COVID, to minimize trips, you're buying all three of those items from Kroger because Kroger carries all three. And so these retailers that have the assortment that customers want are now winning. And we're seeing a lot of customers change their preferred retailer as a result of these dynamics. And so what this means is we're creating a place in which no existing customer is safe. You can't assume you're going to keep your existing customers, but where all of your competitors' customers are up for grabs, and you can win a bunch of new competitors if you can outperform you can win a bunch of new customers if you can outperform your competitors. So we're creating a winner-takes-all market where nothing's established. So the big takeaway from all of this is what got us here is not what's going to get us there. The retailers that survive and thrive in the post-COVID era are going to be the ones that are going to be able to put aside the playbook that they used through February of this year and invent a new playbook for this new set of behaviors and new circumstances that have emerged as a result of COVID. So to me, the four characteristics that are most going to define a successful retailer are going to be those that are able to truly behave digitally first. Over the last several years, we've all gotten good at talking about digital first, but in the heart of hearts of most CEOs, they still gravitated to their traditional retail metrics and their traditional brick and mortar performance. Now they're going to have to truly invest and behave as if digital is the most important part of their business and the front door of their store, because it truly is. Retailers are going to have to win on this new dimension of safety and trustworthiness. And historically, that wasn't a high priority for which retailer a consumer would choose. So this is a new dimension that we're going to compete on. It's going to be super important that you match your assortment to the needs of your customer and that you win on convenience. With all of these shopping trips up for grabs, retailers are really going to have to cater to this new set of expectations of consumers, because we really have a winner-take-all model for those retail visits. And ultimately, one of the most important attributes for retailers is going to be their ability to overcome innovators' dilemma. The retailers that are able to reinvent themselves and imagine that COVID put them out of business and that they started a new business on March of 2020 are going to be the ones that do the best. The retailers that are trying to subtly alter their plans from earlier this year, that are trying to adjust their budgets, that are trying to reprioritize their existing initiatives, they're really still stuck in the past. And those are the retailers that are least likely to survive and thrive as we go forward. So hopefully that gives you some food for thought, and I will look forward to seeing you all online, and please feel free to send me any feedback. Thank you.
All right. Jason, thank you so much for being a part of this. Thank you all, all the folks that are listening, for being a part of our virtual summit. We wish we could have been with all of you in person, but this is the next best thing. I want to thank all of the speakers and sponsors. We are going to be sending a survey out asking for your feedback on what you liked, what you didn't like. As we mentioned earlier, we have a couple things coming up, including our weekly webinar series, which resumes on August 12th. And then we have our Holiday Optimization Summit on October 7th. So we would love to get your feedback to hear what your thoughts are, so we can make some improvements. So that's it for these 2 days. Thank you all again for being a part of it, and hope you learned something, and we look forward to seeing you hopefully in person as soon as possible. Have a great rest of the week, and we will be in touch.